So you have costochondritis, you've bought the Backpod, you started using it, it was effective to start off with, but eventually over time, it's become less and less effective. This is because it is a passive mobilization drill. Passive meaning there's no active stimulus or strength that the ligaments around these joints we're trying to mobilize can adapt to and get stronger in the ranges that we want, so that we can stop falling back into the same hole and needing to mobilize very frequently. With the Backpod, we are literally laying on it passively and breathing. On top of that, because you're not gradually strengthening the root issue, the ligaments on the anterior side of the inner spine, you're continuing to get weaker and the problem's getting worse, and the Backpod's becoming less effective. Because if you don't use it properly, you lose it. I'm really not trying to bash the Backpod. I'm super grateful that Steve August explained the bucket concept. Now, the bucket concept is a great analogy and representation to help you conceptualize costochondritis and what's going on with the ribs. With a rib being the bucket handle, Steve August explains that the real reason why you have pain on the front of your chest at the rib joints is because it's actually the joint on the other side of that rib that is tight and stiff as heck. And so the opposite rib on your front is being forced to hypermobilize and strain just in order to keep your regular function, like breathing, getting up, getting around. So it does make sense to mobilize the side opposite to the pain, but my piece that I would need to add into this is that you can replace that passive mobilization with active stimulus and get greater, longer lasting effects, because when the ligaments that hold a joint together become stronger in a more mobilized position or a greater range, then that resolves the tightness issue as the tissues get gradually stronger and stronger through longer range. This active stimulus was my breakthrough to kicking costochondritis to the curb and never needing to feel that pain again. I had costo very intensely for a brief period of time, probably a month very badly, and then 3 months medium. Then it started to come back when the Backpod started losing its effect, but by then I'd figured out that playing around in thoracic extension helped alleviate that, and then I added some active work to it, and that really kept it away well. How I got costochondritis was my family and I didn't have a place to stay, and we stopped in at a family member's house up north that was empty. I literally remember I was sleeping on this air mattress I had never slept on before, and it was weird shaped, like the top part of it was like arched up and elevated, and I just remember waking up like face first, like arched chest into this thing. I just woke up real funky, and then I remember going to move, and I was like, I just had these sharp stabbing feelings on the front of my chest, and it only hurt with specific movements, like getting up off a couch or off a bed, getting down onto a couch or a bed. Fucking that did the most. Walking, cough, like I think sometimes breathing, not all the time, but man, I just could not fucking believe it. Okay, I want to talk about troubleshooting and getting into this position, because I understand for some people it's very aggressive and aggravating. There's a few methods. The first one I'd recommend is what I discovered before even this active work was this passive, like rolling off the edge of a surface, whether it be the corner of your bed, the corner of a couch, like the armrest if it's square, rounded, whatever, just some sort of soft furniture that you can slowly, incrementally use to get in between each vertebra of the spine and like pry it open a little bit and take a breath there. You don't want to hold the breath for too long, because if you're there for an extreme amount of time, it'll hurt, but you just want to get it to open up. That gave me and others a lot of alleviation initially when the Backpod stopped being effective for them also. This is a more harder version of the Backpod, especially if you can get it off like the corner of a bed or something. And there's also a decompression element to it by hanging off the furniture, so I think that's helping as well, which is why it could be more effective even after when the Backpod stops working. However, this is still a passive and therefore temporary mobilization and not a long-term fix, but it will free up the joints enough and may reduce your pain enough to help you get into these more arched active positions, which will give us more greater long-term lasting adaptation and effect. Here's an example of how to make this exercise easier and progress your range of motion as the tissues become more adapted and stronger through longer range. I really don't use much weight at all. Like 2.5 kg was plenty for me for a long time. That's all I really used. Variations, obviously probably everyone is not going to have a couch shaped like this, and this was like perfect for me. My flatmate got it. You just want to get some active arch stimulus in any way you can. I think floor variations might be less aggressive because your hips aren't creating as much of an arch when they're dropped down so much. So that could be a type of variation that can make things a lot more easier. On the floor, you could use medicine ball. I'm currently using a weighted duffel bag or a weighted bag on the floor, and that still works really well. You don't have to be very elevated. You could use a bundle of towels wrapped together in that, like a cylinder shape, and do active contractions off that. You might not even need to have your arms overhead. It just helps emphasize more thoracic extension. As long as your thoracic or T-spine is just getting some active contracting stimulus over that arched lengthened position, then probably some adaptation to those ligaments is occurring. So you can have these rounded things on like the armrest of your couch if it's square, and do it off of that, or you can do it off your bed, or you can do it off your bench, or there's so many, like the limit is your creativity and how desperate you are to get results. Like a less aggressive version would be something where the size of what you're arching over is a bit larger, and so the angle will be less demanding and aggressive. The back bridge from ATG, they have two sizes. They have a larger one and a small size, which is crazy because it might be like perfect for people that are trying to progress this. And they're a bit expensive if you're outside the US. I'd recommend getting creative. I'm not asking you to buy those, obviously within your means, but I think it can be a really convenient and good solution since you can progress the sizes. The larger one would be an easier starting place, and the smaller back bridge would be a more aggressive starting place, or more difficult because it's a smaller circle. It's a more intense rounding angle for the spine, rounding degree for the spine, and so that would make it more difficult. And it's same with like rounding forward. The more you round forward, then the more aggressive it is. If you do want to support me and you do want to buy one, I will have a discount code which should be B2B2, broken to bulletproof 2, and you can get yours for a discount. I think it's like 25% discount or 20%, but you don't have to obviously use your means. And if you're really suffering, I like try all the other variations first. You can progress perfectly without the back bridge, so don't feel like you have to get the back bridge. They do ship ideally in America, is where they're manufactured, and getting them shipped overseas is a bit expensive. Final, another variation would be a wall pullover. It's just the same thing. You're just doing it over a wall. You could give that a try, see how well that works for you. Form cue when doing these pullovers or these arched pullovers. You want to one would be to own whatever end range you had, like really try contract back, squeeze back, and own that bottom position, and also do some pulses out of it. Like you don't have to do full complete reps, but like sort of here, sort of like partial reps, and then definitely just want to get some anterior contraction on the front of the spine there as well. But just spending time in this position actively, and getting the spine to bend and flex over that arch, will give you some adaptation. Don't feel embarrassed. Like if you're doing what's best for you, then there's no need to be embarrassed about it, and you should not care what others think. if you look weird or whatnot. They don't understand all the nuances of your situation. So don't care and don't feel less than because someone else's idiot opinion of your situation, if you know what I mean. If I'm able to do this more full time, then I can help. Then all I can do is spend my time towards helping people and nothing else. And that would be that's like a dream come true. That's like, imagine that. If you're a person seeking the current science of this condition, Steve August has a YouTube channel called The Backpod. He's a New Zealand physio who also had costochondritis badly, and he created the Backpod. And he has like a 40-minute video going into detail with the current literature and misdiagnoses, etc. And his overall general stance is it's not an inflammation issue, but more of a structural imbalance and tightness issue. And that's the stance I have on it too, as someone who's actually had the injury. Think about why the inflammation is there. It's because there's damage to the tissues there and the body's trying to heal itself. I want to leave you with a quote from Charles Poliquin. He was the most successful strength coach by a landslide, gaining Olympic gold in 15 different sports. And I think the person closest to him had one, maybe two, you know what I mean? And so I'm paraphrasing, but the quote is something like, if you're waiting for scientific research to be done before implementing something or trying something into your training regime or rehab routine, then you're going to be waiting a very, very, very long time, decades even. And that's if it gets done, and also if it's done correctly and every factor of that research was honest and true and accurate and appropriate. And so you could have research done, but the factors in it could be tailored towards whatever bias it is from the person it's funded by. Some people don't understand that that's not an ethical thing to do. It's a bad thing. And so that's why Charles Poliquin was so far ahead of the curve, was because he didn't wait for literature before trying something. And that's what I'd suggest to you. You can try this stuff safely and in a way that won't hurt you or make it worse. And a pain cue for implementing this is, it might feel uncomfortable, but as long as you're not paining and straining and you're just able to get adaptation in that uncomfortable but tolerable position, then that's your way up. If you are experiencing pain, trying to get into it, I think it's better to try and quickly understand the stimulus, to land it more properly and frequently. I'm not saying be reckless and stupid, but it's either that and try to get it to work, or stay without a solution and have it get worse anyway. So it's like you're better off taking the risk towards uphill, you know what I mean? Because I also was trying to understand Achilles rehab at that time, and I had just flared up my Achilles, like both of them pretty badly, and because I didn't bathe them in enough blood, and then I did long range with too many reps, and it just aggravated so badly. And I also pulled my hip around the same time, hip flexor slightly from just going too crazy in the long range. And so I learned all these things and still had the other issues I was dealing with. And I remember just going up the stairs with all these injuries, and I was just I just collapsed on the bed, and I was just I just prayed to God. I was just God, please help me. Just please heal me. And then I did some research into Costo. I discovered the name and then the Backpod, and then I bought the Backpod, and it gave me alleviation for a bit, but as time went on, it became less effective, and other people have the same effect, and the same effect also with other passive spine drills. I think if you're having pain on the backside with Costo, just aside from the spine, sort of outwards a bit, I think you may benefit from pairing this with back extension progression, just as a way to hit the anterior side of the spine and the posterior side of the spine to make sure the ligaments are each way are strengthening through length and getting more mobile and less tight and stronger.